professionalism matters, ethics matters, and honesty and integrity matter. And so, be honest.
Ask the Dean, episode 43 with my wonderful friends, Rachel Grubbs. Amazing. How are you?
I'm excellent. I'm happy it's spring.
It is spring. We got 4 inches of snow last night on top of the almost 3 feet that we got last week.
Yeah, well, that's spring in Colorado.
That is spring in Colorado. That is Colorado. Dr. Scott Wright, how are you doing?
Doing well. I'm doing well. Just enjoying life and, living the dream.
You got your first vaccine today? First dose?
No, it had to be switched to tomorrow, but I don't have to drive an hour and a half to 2 hours to get there. I only have to drive 45 minutes now, so that's a good thing. Yeah.
Well, congratulations on that.
Yes.
Still waiting on mine. Rachel, you're getting yours tomorrow as well.
I'm getting mine Thursday.
We're all over the place, but
that's
exciting.
Yep.
I think 2.5 million doses a day they're doing now.
Yeah.
Phenomenal.
Yeah, it's crazy.
That is the power of organization. It's amazing when you put your heart into something, make it happen.
Yeah.
Well, I'm excited to get going. Anything in the mapped world we need to talk about? Or are we ready to start answering some questions?
Yeah, let's start answering questions because I don't have my mapped thoughts organized. Maybe we can do a little of that at the end.
Yeah, let's do that. First question here was asked before. The question askers asked, do admissions committees look at social media accounts of prospective students? I do not have anything bad. However, I am vocal about speaking out against injustices. I hope the adcoms are not too political. Thank you. So, Dr. Scott Wright, how much free time do admissions committees have to go browse the social webs?
Well, it's interesting that this questioner asked this question. I think it's a reasonable question to ask, and I don't think, in my experience, I don't think admissions committees members are gonna, spend a whole lot of time doing that. Now, I would say that in general, that they won't, they're not going to spend time to do that. I think if something comes up where it makes them question something, then it would be in the realm of possibilities. So I'll give you an example. We had a situation where we got an anonymous letter, which you typically don't pay much attention to anonymous letters of that sort, but it gave light to something on the social media presence of one of our applicants that we were interviewing. And so what that led us to do was to investigate the social media presence of this particular candidate to see if indeed there was some stuff there that was inappropriate or that would cause concern or something like that. That's a very unusual situation that I think occurred. Now, we did have an admissions committee member who, when he would have a candidate that had been interviewed that he was going to be presenting to the admissions committee. That's how we would do it. Every committee member was assigned a group of applicants for the given committee meeting, and it was their responsibility to know all about those applicants and to present those applicants then to the rest of the committee to discuss. And he would frequently, if an applicant said they were disadvantaged, for example, then he would Google their address and see what the value of their home was for that address. And that didn't necessarily mean that they were disadvantaged or something, but it meant that he was fully investigating. That was unusual. He was the only admissions committee member that would do that kind of thing. But on occasion, we would see somebody who would say, oh, they were disadvantaged and, blah, blah, blah. And it turns out mom and dad are both doctors. They live in a multi-million-dollar house and, et cetera. Then the discussion would go into what, maybe he was disadvantaged in the past, or, in his upbringing, or et cetera, et cetera. So that's a little bit different situation, but I would say it would be more likely on the social media presence that the admissions officer would do that, as opposed to the committee itself, or individual committee member, that the admissions officer would investigate the letter that they had received, or where it would not be necessarily unusual for example, a current medical student to say, "Oh, a friend of mine from my college has applied, and I know this about that person," and that might highlight, okay, let's do a little investigation, look at their Facebook page, Instagram, or whatever, and see if it's possible. Instagram is private, obviously can't see anything, but if their Facebook page, you can kind of see a little bit more depending on what their privacy settings are and stuff. So anyway, so answer to this question is, it's unusual, not out of the realm of possibilities, but I would say not to worry about that kind of thing. If you're political, and you have a strong feeling about something, then, just as long as you're not guzzling a pint of beer, or whatever, things like that, then I would say you'd be okay.
that kind of reminds me of the quote unquote study that came out about social media and professionalism with physicians.
Yes.
And if you're a female and you wore a bikini, that's not very professional, and it's just ridiculous.
Yeah, it is ridiculous. Yeah.
I mean, I would say that's one of the challenges, right? Is that to me is just like patriarchy, right?
Yes.
Like,
yes.
A man can go to the beach, but a woman can't. I mean, these are the suits that we buy. They're in stores, right? Like,
right.
It's ridiculous.
Right.
But it does sort of speak to the way that I think you want to present yourself as it pertains to medicine. And like we've talked about being a whole person. So if there's a matter of justice that really matters to you, I certainly wouldn't hide it, because if the school is, in strong disagreement to that issue, then you're probably not going to be very happy there.
Right. Exactly.
But it's also thinking about, like, are you, so, to me, that's the big difference between the bikini or this is a matter of justice versus, that example from a woman from a few years ago she called it politics, but what she was saying was that some people didn't deserve to get treatment from her. So she had like social media posts that were like, essentially joking that she would allow certain patients to die.
Yeah.
And that person has no right practicing medicine.
Yes, absolutely. And that's what I'm referring to. Is not, I was joking about the guzzling the beer. It's really mostly about super inappropriate things that would cause you, really concern.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right. Let's bring up some of our live questions here.
New to MAPT, I first want to say thank you. I am non-trad, working full-time as a professional ballet dancer. I've been pursuing a degree through my university's College of Professional Studies, taking all classes online. How do schools view online classes? Do they know if classes are taken online from the application or your transcript? I still have some prereqs left to take, Chem 2 Orco Biochem Physics, and planning to do those in person. Online, Dr. Scott Wright.
Well, I know that there are some schools that will not accept prerequisites taken by distance learning. And
let's talk in general, kind of non-COVID times.
Yeah, exactly. Non-COVID times. COVID, clearly an anomaly here. But non-COVID times, there are schools that will not accept prereqs. All the other classes, they don't care. Prereqs, particularly the sciences, there are some schools that will say, no, you can't do that. We won't accept that. And transcripts sometimes do show that it's distance learning, and sometimes they don't. So that may or may not be instructive. What the applications ask when you're filling out the courses and you're inputting your courses, then they'll ask, how was this course taken? Was it in person? Was it online or whatever? And so, you obviously want to be honest about that. And
a lot of students aren't super honest about that because there are transcripts that don't show whether or not a class was taken online. And if they look at their transcript and they go, ha, it doesn't show online, therefore I don't have to say it was online, and that will reflect better on me.
Right.
What are the ramifications of that if it ever?
If I was an admissions officer and I found out that they had lied on the application, they would be not considered. And if we had admitted them, we would rescind the offer.
Yeah.
And you're not saying that online is grounds for dismissal. You're saying the lie about the online.
Exactly. The lying is the key.
Yeah.
So if they'll lie about that, what else in their application were they lying about? You know, that's the point. And if they'll lie about something on their application, will they cheat in school or lie about something as a student? Or, you know, I mean, you know, professionalism matters, ethics matters, and, honesty and integrity matter. And so, be honest. That's the message.
It's the moral of the story.
Yeah.
And for this particular student, so she says she's done some online, and it looks like, I can't tell if she's saying I may do those in person if you recommend, or she's already she's already planning to. Mm-hmm. Like, this is often a thing. Like, I've already done it. Should I worry? Like, you're not saying go back and retake them. You know?
Well, I am saying if
you are.
She needs
getting a nod.
Yeah, she needs to investigate the schools that she will be applying to and what their position is on online coursework. Now, if it's in COVID times, I think there's some wiggle room there that, like we've discussed often. Mm-hmm. If they were before COVID, then if she wants to apply to a school and she took Bio 101, online, and the school doesn't take it online, then she's going to have to retake it. Yeah.
Okay.
Or, the school may allow her to take maybe another upper level bio class to address that. But, it's going to take some investigation on her part to understand exactly what, what's going on.
Okay. Yeah. Good to clarify that. We went real macro on that, and I wanted to be sure we covered her micro.
Yes. Yeah.
There's
point.
Definitely a situation like that where school may go, you know what? In general, we do not accept online classes, but for you, we'll accept online classes.
Yeah, there's all
professional ballet dancer. We understand the kind of stress associated with that, the time commitment associated with that. That alone tells us a lot about who you are as a person and your ability to still do well, even though those classes are online. We'll accept online for you.
Yeah. Right. And she doesn't say whether or not she's in a touring company. I mean, maybe she's doing online because that's the only way she can study 6 days a week.
Yeah.
We just don't know.
It could be. Yeah. But she has to recognize that that's going to be the school's call, and the school may make an exception. The school may not, so it just depends.
I also just made an assumption of she, so ballet dancer, whoever you are, whatever gender you are. I'm sorry. That was not fair of me. Okay, moving on.
Hey everyone, so I recently realized I'm able to graduate early one semester. Do medical schools look at negatively towards students who do? I have a strong GPA, good trend, and plan on gaining experience and studying for the MCAT with the extra time. All right, micro macro.
Yeah.
Super micro question. Like, will they freak out?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're not. No, they're not going to freak out about that. That's, typically if you say in your application, that you're going to graduate on X day, X semester, you're going to be graduating. If you graduate a semester early because things worked out that way, I wouldn't worry about it now.
Yeah. Even a semester late because your applications are going in so early. As long as you graduate before you start medical school.
Yep. That's right.
Not a problem.
That's right.
And it's not like graduating a semester early is going to affect medical school at all because you still have the normal application cycle, and it's not like at least U.S.-based medical schools don't have multiple start times during the year, so it's not going to affect anything.
Nope.
Do it.
All right. Here's a perennial favorite.
How do you build a school list if you have an uneven MCAT score? Dun, dun, dun. One of my sections is significantly lower than the other three. The lower one is not cars. Shocker.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. You build a school list. It doesn't matter if you have an uneven cars. MCAT score.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think you base it on the total score, and because most of the stats that you're going to find, even on MSAR, are going to be giving you percentiles of the total score. They'll also give those percentiles of the sub scores, but I think that admissions committees are they probably are not going to drill down that far unless there was something consistent about. So, for example, maybe in the chem physics section, was the really low score, and then you made a C in physics. They're going to be thinking, what's going on, here with this low physics grades, and then also not doing well in the physics section of the MCAT. There's a theme here that we need to really figure out what's going on. So, barring that, then I wouldn't say I would worry that much about it, and then you just develop a list based on what you've got.
Yep.
All right. Here's a serious one with a fun one.
Is it okay to suggest to LOR writers, letter of recommendation writers, to highlight certain activities or characteristics about you to avoid having multiple letters with generalized context? How is your bracket doing, Dr. Ouch. Yeah. Oh, wow.
Wait a minute. Why isn't this questioner asking about Rachel and my bracket?
Well, if they
all
know
of us
me
are
at
out.
all, they know that I don't follow the sports balls. But you chime in all you want on your bracket.
Well, I'm bummed because the Longhorns lost.
Yes, Longhorns lost. The Gators lost to the team that Ohio State lost to, so all of us are a bunch of losers.
Right.
I was just blissfully unaware until right now. That's all.
That is okay. Yeah.
So I'll try
My
not
nephew
to
did get 7th in the state for his weight class for Ohio, though, for wrestling. So if you want to talk
Nice.
about that particular sport, I'm all in.
That is cool, right?
It's super
Well,
cool.
I'll try not to take an offense to the fact that I was not mentioned in this question.
Okay, so back to the question. Letter of writer suggesting certain activities and characteristics.
Yeah, so I heard this recently, I think on Clubhouse, actually. It was a medical student at Harvard who's on the admissions committee. And it was a suggestion that she had, and I really liked it, to be very explicit, to say, hey, like, you're divvying up the workload.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I want you, this person, to talk about these traits about me. I want you, this person, to talk about these traits. And ideally, they kind of fit nicely with the interactions that you've had with the person,
Right.
and they can speak to those. I think that's great.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't force a conversation around something that the person can't speak to naturally. That's
Right.
That's the only thing I would add.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I think I think your letter writer, you need to be explicit with your letter writers about what you're looking for. You want a strong letter from them. I suggest that you give them a copy of your personal statement and a copy of a updated resume, and then the guide that the AAMC puts out for letter writers. Give them those 3 documents, and then educate them a little bit about what you're looking for. Just as you said, Ryan, I completely agree with that.
Yeah, by the way, Ryan, maybe you did hear it on Clubhouse. I heard something similar really recently. It was last week. The Harvard Diversity Office did applying to med school during COVID. And Janae Lawler from Michigan State, she spoke about that. She talked about, like, a lot of people fixate on, I got to ask my science professor who got an A. And what she was saying is, think about it as a team of people who know you and your various strengths. And I think you can watch that on replay. So we're actually we're not officially promoting it yet, so I'm announcing it now. On March 31st, we're doing an Inside Med admissions, so lots of good stuff coming from Mapped, but I don't think you can really ever get enough great free info. So I would definitely recommend people check out the one that played through the Harvard Diversity Office last week too.
Yeah.
It was awesome.
Yeah.
Let's see. Yeah, so kind of a technical question about the app.
I still have to take physics 1 and 2, and I'm applying the cycle. Is there a place in the application where I add classes I'll take during my senior year?
Yep. Absolutely. There's going to be a place for you to say what you've taken already, what you're currently taking, and what you will take in the future. Yep.
Yeah, there's even a way to mark them. So you can show, like, I don't have a grade yet because I haven't had that course yet. So that they, they know to check.
Yeah. And this brings up another point, is that at least for Texas, this wouldn't be necessarily true for AMCAS, but for the Texas schools, if you say you're going to take microbiology in the spring of your senior year, and then you change, you got to update the schools. You got to update TMDSAS to say, I'm not going to take micro. Instead, I'm going to take immunology or whatever. And because there are some schools that will say, you said you were going to take micro and you didn't take it. Why? You didn't let us know. You didn't follow through with what you said you were going to do in the application. So, we need to investigate this. And so, it's not going to be a problem if you update them early on and say, hey, this reality changed. I couldn't get in the class, or it wasn't being offered, or whatever. So know what you need to do in terms of the application services that you're using, as well as the schools you're applying to.
Yeah, I think that's a key part of it. Again, if you're applying to all 3 application services, understand the nuances of each. For AMCAS, it's not required that you put in current or future courses, because those aren't going to be on the transcript that they're verifying everything against. It's just something that's there, but that may be different for TMDS, TMDSAS, or COMAS. So just check the instruction manuals for each of those.
Yep.
All right.
What do you recommend is best for a gap year, especially if you already have significant amounts of clinical experience?
Oh, I think Europe is great. Go
backpacking.
Backpack through Europe. Or get a job and earn money and save money for med school.
Scott's answering this question really aspirationally, assuming that the entire world is vaccinated and that there are no more variants.
Yes, I agree. I totally agree with that. Sorry. I
know, I'm such a cynic.
Well, you could backpack with your mask on.
That's true. Yeah.
And especially if you're vaccinated, then maybe you'll be okay.
I got a lot of flack a year or two ago on Twitter or somewhere for not recommending just going off the grid and backpacking around the world for a gap year, because the question potentially may come up like, well, what's going on? Like, are you bored of the medical environment and you're trying to get away? Are you burned out? What's going on? And so my recommendation has always been at least keep a small foot in the door. And so I told one person, even, I was like, go or keep doing. He was like a anesthesia tech or something. Keep doing your anesthesia tech part-time and go work at the zoo part-time if that's something you want to do. It doesn't have to all be clinical all the time, but keep your foot in the door just to make sure there's no doubts about what you're.
Because and jokingly, I was saying that about Europe, but what I would do if it were me, I would do the exactly what you're suggesting, Ryan. Is I would say I would backpack through Europe or backpack through wherever, and I would try to set up times where I could shadow physicians or visit hospitals or medical schools or whatever in various countries, and therefore be able to compare. What the healthcare system in Germany is like versus the US or whatever.
Better.
Yeah.
Right. Or do a 6-week trip in the fall when it's off season, but then you're still spending the other 46 weeks of the year
Right.
Yeah. There's a lot of ways to slice that. Yeah, I think, and again, just looking at an application standpoint, at least one of the apps, maybe a Comus, says, if you were on a gap year, tell us what you've been doing with your time. So,
Sure.
there's no, you don't want to make meaning where there's no meaning. They don't say, please now defend why you weren't doing all medicine all the time, but you do want to think about the fact that you want to have that answer ready.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
So, yeah.
Absolutely. We had a student 1 year it actually ends in a tragedy, but we had a student who took not a gap year, but took a deferral for a year. He was admitted, took a deferral because he wanted to travel and, had some really cool plans and all that. So we granted the deferral. And part of what he was doing was backpacking through like northern India, Tibet, all that kind of area and stuff, and ends up a terrible tragedy. He fell in a crevice of ice mountains or whatever. Anyway, and he died. He never was able to start. It was really a terrible, terrible tragedy. And we when the his class enrolled, we kind of told everybody what had happened and everything, just so they would be aware, not so much that they knew him or anything, but we were paying, just kind of an issue for his family and stuff, just to say the whole class was, supportive and very, sorry. And one of the things that I did for his family is I went through and I pulled out excerpts of his interview results, comments that the interviewers had made, and also comments that his letter writers had made about, he was an amazing student, about him, and sent them a letter with those comments in it. And they super appreciated that. But it was really a tragedy. But that kind of thing is good. It was cool that what he was doing and stuff. So anyway, yeah.
So I think to wrap up this question is the question asker is asking specifically, tell me what I should do that'll look good on an application. And the answer is do whatever you want to do, with the one caveat, at least that I add, is keep a foot in the door in healthcare.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
Agreed.
For activities, can I combine two different jobs that I did under, quote, work study? I did them several years ago just for pay as an undergraduate student, nothing fancy, and I did them around a similar time frame. Thank you.
I would say, yeah, particularly if you're running out of space on AMCAS, you can lump certain things like hobbies, you can lump together, or, various things like that. But yeah, I would say, sure.
Yeah. At the end of the day, there's no rules. So you could do what you want. And again, I think the question is, what's the impact? Did one have a significant impact over the other? Then maybe you want to spend your whole time talking about that one and just list the one. If at the end of the day, the question is, what's the benefit of talking about both or listing both? If there really is no benefit, I'll just list one of them, or just have work study as one kind of category, and in the description talk about
the two that you did,
different activities, and maybe highlight an impact from one of them or something like that.
Right.
There's no rules.
Yeah. But I agree with you, Ryan, having an agenda to what you want to come out of mentioning those. Did you learn teamwork, or did you learn diligence and showing up on time and doing what was asked, and things like that? And that's what you're going to highlight within the context of that particular entry work study.
I learned to be submissive and never ask questions and just do what they told me. So I will be a good medical student. Please accept.
Unfortunately, there are jobs where that's what you learn.
Absolutely.
Like, you're gonna need to keep your mouth shut. Although I find that if I have a job like that, I end up leaving. I need to talk. All right. Here's an interesting one.
As an academic fresh start student, I already have BS and MS degrees. Should I complete my second BS or just get the required 90 hours with upper level science courses included? So add a little context to this. So Academic Fresh Start is a Texas specific, TMDSAS specific program that only the Texas actually, Scott, will Baylor now
No,
accept
they
Fresh Start?
They may. They're not required to. It's a state law
just
for the
public.
So they may, and my suspicion would be they would, because when TMDSAS processes the application, they're going to process it according to the dictates of Fresh Start. But let me be clear on this: is that the Academic Fresh Start, I'm a little confused by the way that this questioner has indicated the question. You do not lose credit for having the degree. You lose credit for the courses. Yep. So, for example, if that the only concern would be the courses that you were counting on for prerequisites to meet the prerequisites. If those were 10 years older, then yes, you would have to go back and take only the prerequisites. 90 hours is not going to be required for you to complete. So I think all you're going to need to be concerned about are the prerequisite courses for the Texas medical schools. So, and I would say for this questioner, if you have further questions about this, you can certainly feel free to email me. I'll be happy to answer your questions about the Fresh Start program, as will TMDSAS be able to, and you can give them a call and ask any questions about Fresh Start that you need to. But I'm also happy to do that.
No. So
Scott,
so just finishing go ahead, Scott at map.com.
Yeah, Scott at map.com. Yeah.
Finishing the context. So Academic Fresh Start, again, Texas only, Texas public school, potentially only, TMDSAS specific, where if your classes were more than 10 years ago or 10 or more years ago,
10 or more.
They basically get erased and they don't count towards your GPA. And so you can go back and retake classes and you're starting fresh.
Right.
Yep. Thank you, Texas.
I think it's a great
it's a great program.
Oh, yeah, that was a sincere thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, all right. I'm very amused by this one.
Question about letters of rec, not about Frodo, but his anatomy. What is Frodo?
Okay, so here's what's going on in the student's brain. LOR stands for letter of recommendation. LOTR is Lord of the Rings. So I think that this person was afraid if they said LOR, we might think it was a question about Tolkien. But no worries, because there's a big Tolkien nerd on the call, and she knew what you meant.
Yeah, I've never watched those movies.
What?
Have you?
You've never watched the movies?
No. That's fine. The movies, whatever, but the books,
no.
Your reputation in my mind just went down a little bit. I'm just saying.
Don't care.
So you don't even know who Frodo is?
Of course I know who Frodo is.
Okay.
Oh, look,
I love it.
Scott, you and I are not alone in being shocked and chagrined by this.
Yeah, I'm not a Middle Earth fan.
The whole audience is like, what is going on?
Oh, man.
I don't like Game of Thrones either.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Dr. Ryan needs to now. I agree completely.
All right. No more Middle Earth talk. Let's keep going. Anatomy and micro acceptable for LOR for a science professor. Those are science classes.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely.
Man.
Sorry, I'm still watching the comments come in and just really delighted by them. Here we go. We're going to keep going. Pre-med talk.
Yes.
I know I should not base my school list off the MSAR, GPA, and MCAT. But is there a point or a line where it just isn't a good idea to apply because of low stats? Or is it always okay because it's more than stats, even if a school's median stats are high? Well, let's get this straight. Every school's median stats are high. We often talk about the 10 percentile number, right? So the MSAR gives you median, which as a reminder, right, it's not the average, it's the
Nope.
median. 50% of the class
The
is
middle.
50% is below above. But they also provide 25th percentile, 75th percentile, and 10th and 90th. And so some schools, the 10th percentile is very close to the median. And some schools, there's a big gap between the 10th percentile and that median number. If you are below that median number, there's still a question mark, right? Because 10% of the class is still below that number as well. And this is where I would love to see some more transparency around what's the lowest.
Yeah.
What's the lowest accepted? Because if the 10th percentile is a 506 and literally everyone is a 505, well, that doesn't really help me much.
Right.
So unfortunately, schools don't like to provide that transparency. The AAMC doesn't want to provide that transparency because there's financial opportunities for them on the other side. So.
Yeah, it's a bummer because I think, it is opaque a little bit intentionally because they're like, there's no skin off their backs if you apply, right? It's your money, it's your time, it's your investment. I have seen one or two schools on the school websites that will do class body descriptions of prior years that talk about a range. So as opposed to that 10th percentile, which I agree, if you're going to fixate on numbers, that's the one to look at. But, I've seen a few places that will say last year's Med 1 group, the highest was a 525 and the lowest was a 502, as opposed to saying 10th percentile. So, it might be for this question asker that you're lucky enough to be applying to a couple schools that list that. But I kind of feel like in this question, it might be more about, do you have low stats everywhere and low clinical experience, in which case, maybe you're not ready, right? As opposed to like, is the school within or not within reach or not? If you've got one low thing and everything else is great, it might be that it's time for you to shoot your shot. And that's why we do a whole video series on it, because it's not a 2-minute question, right? It's a 30-minute question.
Right. Well, and I would also say that if you are limiting the number of schools you're applying to because of finances, because you want to limit the number of schools, then you do need to consider, if you're way outside the norm for that school and you're trying to save money, then that may be a school that you don't apply to. So, I think you have to take, again, it's somewhat of that macro picture. What is your goal? What are your goals here? What are your limitations in terms of what you can and can't do financially, for example? And then, make some judgments based on the best shots that you can take with the limited funds that you have. So, I would say consider that as well.
Yeah. And when you consider that later on. Look at everything else that we
absolutely
talking about that, and then pare down the list with some stats if you need to.
Agreed.
Okay, let's see. Where'd we go?
What?
Hey, everyone.
Oh, it got cut off.
Dr. Gray, I'm a huge fan of your application renovation series, and I've noticed you get really excited to see students applying early to be in the first wave of applicants. My question is, how much does the chance of acceptance decrease in the subsequent waves? I'm planning on taking my MCAT at the end of June. I'll be submitting my primaries early and submitting my secondaries hopefully by early August. Since I won't have a complete application for the first wave, I'm worried I won't blah, blah, blah. So unfortunately, and Scott, maybe you can correct me because, I know TMDSAS does have some data surrounding this. Scott, I know you, at least from conversations with Enrique, you had some questions about the data and what is it actually saying. And so not super excited to publicize that data. But I don't know if there's any data out there that really talks about this, unfortunately. And again, I come back to the AAMC doesn't want to promote this information because if students realize that their chance of getting into medical school is decreased 90% if they're applying in September, October timeframe, then those are application fees that they're going to lose out on. And so
Right.
the WMC doesn't want to promote that sort of information. And
Right.
it pisses me off.
Well, the way I look at this is a strictly probability kind of thing, and that is what I'm most focused on are the interview slots. There are a finite number of interview slots available at a school.
Yep.
There's not just endless interview slots. The logistics,
even in virtual times,
right? There's logistically a finite number of slots, and as they award those slots, the percentage possibility of you getting a slot decreases.
Yep.
And so the later your application is, you're vying for more limited number of spots. So your chances are lower to get one of those spots. So to me, that encourages early application.
Scott, have you ever heard how I described rolling admissions?
No, I don't think so.
I liken it to a giant game of musical chairs.
Mhm.
Except
Yes.
in musical chairs, there's always n-1 number of seats available.
Mhm.
So if you have 10 players, there's 9 seats and
Right.
one player loses.
Right.
The rolling admissions process, the medical school application process, is similar to musical chairs, except as every chair gets pulled out, there's 10 more people playing the game because more students are applying. And so your percentage chance of getting one of those seats as a seat is taken away or as an interview slot, right? Because that's really the bottleneck, the true bottleneck. As that interview slot is pulled, your chance gets decreased by that and by how many new applications were submitted that day. Or verified that day or whatever it is.
Right.
And so it's a compounding issue. The later your application is, the less available interview slots potentially there are, and there are more people playing the game.
Yep.
Now I would also say that when I looked at the data, what it seemed to suggest also was that the later it gets in the cycle, the applicants that you're getting are not as strong academically, numbers wise. So if you looked at, for example, the average GPA and MCAT of the groups applying in May and June, they're going to be different than those applying in September and October, or October and November or whatever.
Yeah. And there could be a lot of correlation there.
A lot of reasons for that.
The reason you're a stronger student is because you're more organized and you're on top of things, and that's why you have better grades. And those students applying later are less organized and whatever else.
Could be.
Yeah, we can't be sure for sure about the causal, but I believe there's correlation there.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, the other thing, Ryan, that you sometimes say about rolling admissions, I don't know if I remember hearing that musical chairs analogy, but I know I've heard you talk about the application process as an open exam. Right, an open book test.
Yeah.
And I really like that analogy because I think it speaks to our students, right? Like our students are used to, especially with science exams, doing a lot of cramming. And then, I mean, it's part of why the MCAT is so challenging because you can't cram for it, right? So this is something where you know in advance exactly what's going to be expected of you. It's probably going to take a lot longer than you think it is because there's way more nuance to it, way more exactitude, way more, people talk about the essay, the personal statement, but actually, I just put all the essays and written questions up in the applications tab of Mapped, and there's a lot of written answers. And I just think it's March, right? If anyone has any chance to change the course of their next 4 months so that they apply in May or June instead of in July or August. And it might be that your situation is already lined up that you just can't, and you're just going to take your chances. But if there's any way that you can still shape your life to apply earlier, I would think about doing that.
Agreed. I agree.
It's an open book test. You know what to expect.
Yeah. So to finish that analogy, and it was a professor from the NIH that I heard that on a long time ago. The medical school application is your first med school test, and it's an open book test, and applying late is failing your first med school test.
Yep.
And then, so this gets at some of the injustice of the process, right? So as you've said before, Ryan, many schools don't really talk openly about rolling admissions. Every year I talk to parents who say, I've been looking online and I see here's when the deadline is. So, we plan to apply in September, October.
Yeah.
No.
That was the biggest shock to me when I talked at that admissions summit in Toronto. I had a member of my team go and scour. I think we did 100 different schools. And I forget the number off the top of my head, but it was around 25 to 30%. Only 25 to 30% of schools talked about rolling admissions and explained why it was important to apply early.
Yeah.
I think most schools assume that people know what that means. Rolling admissions. I think there's an assumption that they think that the students understand what that means, which I don't think is a good assumption.
But I mean, some schools don't even use that word. They just say opens this date, closes that date.
Yep.
But I've had institutions that had a 7-month open process and then still reviewed all applicants after it closed. So even though it was a wide window, it didn't matter. It wasn't actually rolling. And I don't think med schools even clarify in every case that that's what's going on. So I guess I'm saying that for anyone who's listening now and going, oh my God, I really didn't understand it was that important. Like, we agree it's confusing. That's why we're here. So we're not scorning you. We're trying to shine light for you.
Right. Yep. That's right.
All right. Somebody says
that's one of the benefits of Mapped too, is we have all of that information in there, and we have the ability to ping you during the cycle.
Right. A commiserator says, I was getting emails from Acomas a couple of weeks ago to still apply. Yeah, email. Me too. I got those same emails.
Yep.
I thought, like, what?
Yeah.
The new cycle opens in 4 weeks.
We have a budget shortfall. Let's see if we can get a couple more applicants in.
Okay.
Stinks.
Go back here.
Non-tread here. I'm having a difficult time finding clinical opportunities in general, but especially during COVID. I have found scribing opportunities, but my pre-med advisor said that wasn't clinical. This is the second week in a row I think we've had this scribing, not clinical. Other clinical opportunities need a certification, can't afford this, or have been put on hold. I'm not sure what to do. Any advice? Yes, go be a scribe.
Yep, agreed. Your pre-med advisor is wrong.
So that's not to say that there's a medical school out there that doesn't like scribing. They are wrong. But scribing
in general, scribing is well accepted.
Yep.
For macro picture, like you said, Ryan.
Yep.
Scribing is strong, and you get a lot of great experience. You learn the language. Yeah, it has a lot of benefits to it.
I can't wait for my my medical terminology podcast and book and everything to come out. So,
that's awesome.
Wait, is that the one for English or Spanish?
English. I have a Spanish podcast coming out as well, and book, and yeah.
¿Por qué no los dos?
¿Por qué no los dos? ¿Por qué no los tres?
Wait, what's the third one going to be?
Well, we have our Mapped journal.
Yes, right. As soon as I get back to the final edits and lay out on that.
But the Premed Playbook Guide to the MMI is in the works.
Yeah, well, so podcasts and books coming. We're always working on more for you guys.
Never ending. I had a friend ask me the other day, he's like, what's the point of writing all these books? I'm like, because I like to, and because it's for very cheap information for students.
Yeah. It's just, I think some people still like to learn out of books. Like, personally, that's not really my bag, but it's, it's nice to provide information in multiple formats.
Yep. All right.
Okay, back to this question.
Is it possible to submit a committee letter from 2 institutions? I did a do-it-yourself postbac, and I'm currently pretty far into the process at each school. If I do ultimately do both, how should I approach this? Interesting.
So for the Texas schools, the answer is no. You have one committee letter, or you have individual letters. Those are the choices. Yeah. Those are the choices.
So it'll shut you out of multiple letters if you select one as a committee letter.
Yeah. If you select committee letter, they're going to be expecting one committee letter. If you select individual letters, they're going to be expecting individual letters.
Interesting.
From whoever.
I'm assuming you could hack the system and say that they are both individual letters, but they end up being committee letters.
Yeah, you can always hack things. But
yeah. At the end of the day, the question is why? Why would you want to do that?
You want that? Yeah, exactly.
I wouldn't want to waste time of one of the admissions committees. I would go to the one potentially that knows you the best, have them collect the letters from professors at both schools. Or
right, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Find out like a smarter way to manage it to see if that committee will accept some letters from the other school.
Yeah. And when I was at UT Dallas, we had a committee process, and we would do that. We would allow you had to have a certain number of letters, and those letters could come from our institution. If you had been at a previous institution and you wanted a letter from a professor at that institution, that was fine. So I agree with that, Ryan. That's the best. That's the best option there. Whoa!
All right, I think that takes us to the end of our popcorn popping.
Yeah, someone pre-ordered the book. Yay! I'll share my screen because a good plug for the new book never hurts. The Premed Playbook Guide to the Medical School Application Process is now available for pre-order, which is super exciting as I'm trying to share my screen here.
Very exciting.
You can get that on Amazon. I'm pretty sure Barnes & Noble, kind of any bookstore has it. The Amazon pre-order price is $19.95, but remember, if you pre-order it and the price goes down to like $16 or $12 or whatever, then that's the price you pay. And we do have our Mapped Amazon app that.
I mean, you don't have to go through the Map storefront. If you do, you kick us money for coffee or sparkling water. So no one's under any obligation to use that link. It's just, it might, like some people were saying the other day, they were having trouble finding this title. It's there. I've searched it a bunch of ways, but that's a quick way to get access to all of Ryan's titles, plus like our t-shirts and a bunch of the recommended reading that we've mentioned over the years. It's just a handy storefront. Yeah, so you'd asked at the beginning if we wanted to do any mapped announcements. I'll do a quick screen share. All right, so in the application services, I know this, you guys can see that, right?
Yep.
Okay, I know that still looks a little funky, but if you go to the applications tab, we're going to pretty this up pretty soon. But in the meantime, the easiest thing to do is once you're on the services tab, just go to the little 3 dots next to the line of each thing. And then someone was asking before, I think, about disadvantaged, and I've got the disadvantaged essays, or in some cases, lack thereof for essays for each of the 3 services. So for AMCAS, you kind of get to self-identify, like they give some things to think about, but you can choose to explain why you think you're a disadvantaged applicant. That goes back to what Dr. Wright was saying about, like, if you self-identify, someone might be Googling the cost of your house. It's on Zillow. Versus for a COMIS, disadvantaged status is look at these 10 bullet points and see if one of them applies to you. And you just answer yes or no to each of these. So there isn't actually an essay. I just put it here in the essay section because I kind of wanted to cover that topic for each of them so that you're thinking, I write a disadvantaged. Is it for all 3 services? Well, no, it's not for this one. So I wanted to make sure people are checking that out because, going back to this topic we had of this is an open book test, you can certainly just go make a free account for all 3 services right now just to look around. But if you're a mapped user, everything's in here for you to start working on your prompts and actually thinking about those essays without ever even getting into the application. And this has been here a few weeks now, but just wanted to show it on air and make sure everyone's checking out. I mean, look how many essays there are here. Like maybe not all of them are going to apply to you because some of them are about things like academic infractions, but
Yeah.
You want to check them all out and make sure that if there are any that apply, you've got your answers ready. So it's definitely more than just the personal statement and your activities.
Yep. Awesome. Yeah, I can't wait till we have those new user kind of experience of Mapped up in the next couple
Yeah, we'll definitely do a big tour of that, I think. I mean, Mapped is great, but it's lost. It's not the prettiest right now. So in a few weeks, it'll be a little prettier and a lot more intuitive.